The geography of Kentucky. As noted, Kentucky has more rivers and bodies of water than any other state than Alaska. If you look at the majority of the major cities in Kentucky, they are all founded on rivers. The one exception is, of course, Lexington, and Lexington was settled on one of the largest salt deposits in all of the state. Salt is very important, not quite as important as water, but your body does need salt. You need salt to preserve animals that you might kill because you can't eat it all at one time. It also can be used for medicinal purposes, and it has a curing nature. Kentucky is 39,000 square miles, about a little over 4 million people, 425 miles east to west, and 180 miles north to south. Kentucky has six regions, geographic regions. Some textbooks might say 5. Those 6 regions are the Appalachian or the Eastern Coalfield, the Bluegrass, the Knobs, which is the one that's sometimes left out. It's just sometimes included with the Bluegrass, the Pennyroyal, and also the Western Kentucky Coalfield and the Jackson Purchase. Kentucky has 120 counties. Only Texas and Georgia have more. Make sure you look in the back of your book about county formation and also governors. There's a short synopsis of each of the governors. We will talk about in class the names of the body and the names of towns and bodies of water. Just be aware that a lot of communities are named by something that the earliest settlers saw around them, such as Otter Creek, Beaver Dam, Lick Skillet, things of that nature. Now, the first area of Kentucky that people actually made it to was the Eastern Coalfield. It is approximately 1/4 of Kentucky, and this is where we have where many people get the Kentucky hillbilly image. However, you look at a lot of the people in the Eastern Coalfield, they don't resemble that image. Most of those are the people that would live on the hilltops. They would, when settlers came over, they settled in the upper parts of the mountains or the hills, as they call it in Eastern Kentucky. And you have a lot of cities, communities that very much resemble ours. They just might be a little smaller. However, the basis for the Kentucky hillbilly comes from what's known as the creek bed people. The creek bed people are the ones who, when they came over, they settled in the areas along the old dried up creek bottoms or those little valley areas that, one, are good for farming, are good for gardening. But what happens is you have generations and generations and generations of Kentuckians who have lived in those creek beds and they never moved. The hills that surround the creek bed are almost as a barrier. Later on in this semester, you'll actually see a video that greatly highlights the differences between the hilltop versus the creek bed. In the Eastern Kentucky region, education and healthcare have always been a major issue. In fact, Lyndon B. Johnson, when he implemented the Great Society, he did it from the front porch of an Eastern Kentucky family. Some of the major cities, Pikeville, Ashland, Corbin, Barberville, all of those are hilltop cities. The majority of the healthcare problems, the education problems, the infrastructure problems, again, deal with the creek bottom people, the creek bed people. Bluegrass was the first region that was actually settled. It has the largest population, has Lexington, Louisville, of course, which has about approximately 1.5 million people that currently live there. Very fertile, about 10 feet of topsoil. Lexington is the primary city, sometimes called the heart of the Bluegrass. It's, of course, named for the Revolutionary War battle, and you can see all the information about horses because that is the main money maker in the bluegrass region. It's all about horses. Now, when we talk about agriculture, agriculture not only includes what's grown in the ground, but it also includes livestock, which horses are a part of. The bluegrass region is number one in the state in terms of agricultural value because of livestock. The Pennyroyal is the number one agricultural region in terms of what comes out of the ground. Louisville is, of course, named after Louis the 14th, not the 16th. There is a mistake there. It is the largest city in the state, and some people argue that Louisville, while in the state of Kentucky, is not actually in the state of Kentucky. It has more characteristics of a northern, more urban center. Frankfort is the capital. Most people don't realize that the reason why Frankfort is the capital is because Lexington and Louisville refused to allow the other one to be capital. So they settled on a city that's roughly in the middle. It's not quite in the middle. But Frankfort, right on the Kentucky River. There, of course, is also Covington and Newport, which are suburbs of Cincinnati. Now, the Knobs region is the hilly region that goes around the bluegrass. For example, if you've ever been in Elizabethtown getting ready to get on the Bluegrass Parkway, you see, as soon as you get on the parkway, there's a sign that says Fallen Rock Zone, and you go through a whole bunch of hills right through there. That is part of the Knobs region. There's no real settlements in the Knobs because it's too hilly and it's too rocky. Also, the city of Radcliffe is right on the edge of the Knobs region. The Pennyroyal region is where most of us have currently live, and some of us have lived all of our lives. The Pennyroyal, once again, has rolling land. It doesn't have as much topsoil as the bluegrass, the 10 feet, but it does have a very, very rich topsoil. It's very fertile. It's settled mostly in the 1800s or the 19th century. Some of the main characteristics are the karst region. This means that we have a honeycomb of caves, sinkholes, and everything all around. And of course, this can be characterized with Mammoth Cave. But there are a ton of caves around. There are a ton of sinkholes around. And all we need to do is think about the sinkhole that swallowed a few of the cars from the Corvette Museum to know what we're talking about. A few years earlier, there was an issue off of Dishman Lane / Cave Mill Road where the road just caved in. And odds are one day when somebody's driving down I-65, that will probably happen there as well. Christian County, which is Hopkinsville, year in and year out, tends to be at the top in the state in terms of agricultural production, in terms of what grows in the ground. But if you get on 68, leaving Bowling Green, US 68, Kentucky Highway 80, and you start going west, and you go through Russellville and Hopkinsville, and you go through Cadiz, and you can literally go that way virtually all the way to Paducah, or you can take a spur and actually go to Murray. You see some of the best farmland in all of the state. The largest city in the Pennyroyal is Bowling Green. Hopkinsville is the second largest city, followed by Glasgow, Franklin, and Russellville. Now, if you want to make sure I get this out before we leave this slide, if you notice, it is the Pennyroyal. However, most people, including myself a few seconds ago, pronounced it as the Pennyroyal. This is just one of those great examples of, in Kentucky, we don't let dictation determine how we're actually going to pronounce a word. We're going to make it up our own way. The Western Kentucky Coalfield is the first area where coal mining took place. Owensboro is the largest city, followed by Greenville, Central City, Madisonville, and others. Um, the Western Kentucky coalfield is kind of a shell of its former self. If you would have went to, say, Central City, Greenville, back in the 1970s, this area was booming. Now it's a shell. You can still go and you can see some of the coal mining operations, but you really see communities that were once much larger. They were greater. There was more stuff to do, and it's slowly starting to die. You can literally see it as you drive through. Some of the key points in this area, for those you may not know, there's a wonderful restaurant in Greenville called Phillies. I highly recommend that you go and eat there. Greenville, at one point in time, had one of the largest flea markets in Kentucky, attracted people from all around. And when I say all around, I'm not just talking about surrounding counties. But you also can go and see lock number 7 of the old Rochester Dam. And that particular spot played a very important role in the Civil War. The Jackson Purchase is the furthest western region of the state. Its principal city is Paducah, and primarily Paducah is the only real large city in that particular region. You have a lot of smaller cities like Mayfield and Murray, but Paducah is the high point. In Paducah, there's some very interesting things, such as the Kentucky Quilt Museum. I highly recommend, if you have a grandmother or great-grandmother or anyone in your family that does the patchwork quilts, you can go to that museum. It's very cheap, and it actually is phenomenal. So take your grandma, take your family on a quick little trip, just a couple hours away from here, and you can see something pretty cool. Also, in Paducah, they have the River Wall, which has murals painted on it telling the story of Paducah, which also plays a very important role in the Civil War. Moving from geography, we need to look at some of the earliest periods or earliest important things in our state. One of the things that we need to look at is why people in Kentucky, unless they're from a major city, why do they always say that they're from a county and not a city? Well, the reason why is when Kentucky was created, counties were used as the most important instrument, the most important governing body in all of the state. Now, the Kentucky county system is based very closely on the English county system, where the sheriff was the head of the county. I reference Robin Hood, the sheriff of Nottingham. He ran the county. Now, in Kentucky, originally, the sheriffs ran the county. And when we talk about the county government, we are talking about the fiscal court. The fiscal court, or the county government, is the highest ranking government in a county, even outranking city councils and mayors. Please do not confuse this with the district and circuit judges. That is a completely different kind of court. We're talking about fiscal, F-I-S-C-A-L. In 1849, because of a lot of corruptions with sheriffs, the position of judge executive was created. Now, it's important to note that the justices of the peace, which are primarily called magistrates today, but they still have some of the duties of the justice of peace. For example, they can carry out marriages. Most of them are going to try to use this as a stepping stone to a higher paid or a better position. Now, what does the county court do? The fiscal court do? Well, one, they govern the county. But by governing the county, they have to administer wills, estates, have to care for the poor, oversee guardianships, orphans, take care of the orphans, establish ferries, mills. Now they have to maintain roads. They oversaw the emancipation of slaves, named tax collectors, built or maintained roads, bridges, and appointed many of the county positions. However, many of the positions, such as sheriff, judge executive, county court clerk, and others, are elected. Now, the deputies are appointed. You have to write a county history paper. The county court clerk is the one who keeps the records, such as wills, deeds, license, and they're all kept in county books. The PVA, property value assessment, keeps, for example, property assessments. Well, that was redundant, wasn't it? But keeps things in terms of what's the value of property, how much taxes is going to be collected. It's very important that you know all this, because when you go to write your paper, you are going to have to use these sources. This is where you're going to be getting your documents. On top of that, it's very important, because if you have an issue such as a road needs taken care of or whatever, you need to know who your magistrate, or maybe whatever they are called in your county, who are the elected members of the county fiscal court, so that you can make a request to try to get this stuff taken care of. Very, very important. Now, moving on real quickly, it's important for you to know that Kentucky was the first Wild West, and there's a lot of violence. And you can go through and looking at the churches, this church slide, and see when the first service was held, and everybody pretty well attended. And you also see, for example, Elijah Craig was a Methodist minister who invented bourbon. That wasn't just so people could get drunk. In early Kentucky, bourbon, whiskey, was used as a form of money, and of course it was also used for medical purposes. And of course the people of Kentucky, according to Peter Cartwright, were so rough that they needed religion. They needed to have a awakening. Now, the United States has had two great awakenings, or two great revivals. You see when the first one was in Maryland. The second one started in about 1800, but it had been building since about 1796. It started at the Red River Meeting House in southern Logan County and spread to the Muddy River Meeting House and also the Gasper River Meeting House, all in Logan County. And then it caught most of the United States on fire. James McCready, along with the McGee brothers, will be the principal preachers or evangelists, or whatever you want to call them. It's pretty interesting to look at this revival. People were known, whenever they were moved by the Spirit, to sing, shout, roll, dance, run, shake, and even some of them were known, when they caught the Spirit, to bark. I've been to a lot of church services. I've seen people do a lot of things, but I've never seen anyone bark. The results, well, one, the South Union the Shakers will come to Kentucky at Pleasant Hill and also South Union in response to the Great Awakening. By the way, you can read more about this in your book. On top of that, there's going to be a large number of Christians who will now become devoted to their religion. Others, after the revival meetings concluded, will very quickly fall back to their old ways, and they'll start again with their good old sinning.